The infinite void of space had never felt so ominous. Ethan Reynolds floated helplessly within the remnants of his once proud ship, the Orion's Hope. What had started as a routine mission, a simple reconnaissance of the outer asteroid belt, had turned into a nightmare beyond comprehension. He had prepared for many things in his training, but nothing could have readied him for the absolute isolation of deep space, or the crippling realization that he was truly and utterly alone. The ship's navigation systems had malfunctioned without warning. One moment, everything was stable, the soft hum of the engines a comforting lullaby; the next, a cacophony of alarms blared, drowning out all rational thought. The stars streaked into elongated lines as the ship veered off its designated course, plunging him into the darkest regions of the galaxy, far from any known charted paths. Desperation clawed at Ethan's chest as he frantically attempted to regain control, but the controls were unresponsive, and the thrusters were dead. All he could do was watch as the vastness of space swallowed him whole. Days, maybe even weeks, passed in a haze. Time lost all meaning as the ship drifted aimlessly. The dwindling oxygen supply and the gnawing emptiness of hunger were constant reminders of his mortality. His last recorded transmission had been a plea for help, sent out into the void with little hope of a response. The silence that followed was deafening, more terrifying than the malfunction itself. But then, out of the darkness, a distant light appeared, a glimmer of hope in the endless night. The ship's sensors, though damaged, detected a planet, uncharted and mysterious, orbiting a dying star. With what little energy remained, the ship was drawn towards this beacon, the gravitational pull of the planet tugging it closer, until it breached the atmosphere in a fiery descent. Ethan remembered the heat, the violent shaking, and the overwhelming sense of impending doom as the ship plummeted. He had blacked out just before impact, his mind surrendering to the force of the crash. For a moment there was only darkness, a deep, all-consuming void that seemed to stretch into eternity. When Ethan finally awoke, it was not to the cold metal confines of his ship, but to something entirely different. He was lying on his back, the sensation of soft earth beneath him, and the air was thick with unfamiliar scents. His eyes fluttered open, greeted by a sky unlike any he had ever seen. It was a deep, iridescent shade of violet, streaked with ribbons of gold and green that danced like auroras across the horizon. The sun, or what passed for one on this planet, was a pale, white orb that hung low in the sky, casting an eerie, diffused light over the landscape. He pushed himself up on shaky arms, wincing as a sharp pain shot through his side. His suit, designed to withstand the harshest environments, was torn in several places, revealing deep gashes that oozed blood. Ethan groaned, forcing himself to stand despite the protest of his muscles. He was alive, but just barely. His eyes adjusted to the light, and for the first time he took in his surroundings. He was in the middle of a dense forest, though it bore little resemblance to the forests of Earth. The trees were massive, their trunks a smooth silver hue, and their leaves shimmered in various shades of blue and green. Strange bioluminescent plants grew in abundance, casting a soft, ethereal glow that illuminated the underbrush. The air was warm and humid, filled with the sounds of distant calls and rustling foliage. Ethan's training kicked in, pushing the overwhelming sense of awe and fear to the back of his mind. He needed to assess his situation, take stock of his resources, and most importantly, find shelter and water. He glanced around, searching for any sign of his ship. It wasn't far, a smoldering wreck half buried in the earth about 50 meters away. The hull was cracked, and smoke billowed from the engine compartment, but it was intact enough to possibly salvage some supplies. Staggering towards the wreckage, Ethan's thoughts raced. How had he survived the crash? Was it pure luck, or had something more guided him to this place? And more pressing, where was he? This planet wasn't on any star charts he knew of, which meant it was either incredibly remote or recently discovered. Either way, it was uncharted territory. Reaching the ship, he pried open the emergency compartment, wincing as the metal screeched in protest. Inside, he found what he was looking for: a survival kit, basic medical supplies, and a canteen. He quickly bandaged his wounds, grateful for the immediate relief the med gel provided. The water in the canteen was stale but drinkable, and he downed it greedily, his parched throat aching for more. As he rummaged through the remains, a sense of unease began to creep over him. He was being watched. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end, and he could feel the weight of unseen eyes tracking his every movement. Slowly he turned, scanning the dense foliage around him, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. The forest was silent, save for the distant chirps and rustles. "Hello," he called out, his voice hoarse and unsteady. There was no reply, only the echo of his own voice fading into the trees. Ethan frowned, uneasy but unwilling to dwell on the unsettling feeling. It could just be his mind playing tricks on him, a side effect of the crash and the exhaustion. But as he turned back to the wreckage, he caught a glimpse of movement from the corner of his eye. Someone darted between the trees, moving too quickly for him to make out. Instinctively, he reached for the utility knife at his belt, his fingers closing around the hilt. "Who's there?" he demanded, spinning around to face the direction of the movement. Silence again. The forest was playing tricks on him, he reasoned. Or perhaps there was more to this planet than met the eye. Either way, he needed to stay alert. He couldn't afford to let his guard down. Ethan knew he needed to find a more secure location before nightfall. The ship, damaged as it was, offered little protection, and the forest was too dense to traverse safely in his current condition. He needed to find higher ground, a vantage point where he could survey the area and plan his next move. With one last look at the wreckage, he turned and started walking, heading deeper into the forest. The sense of being watched persisted, but he forced himself to ignore it, focusing instead on the task at hand. His training had taught him how to survive in hostile environments, and this place, alien as it was, would be no different. He just needed to stay focused and vigilant. As he walked, the forest began to change. The trees grew taller, their leaves forming a dense canopy that blocked out the strange sky above. The bioluminescent plants became more abundant, their glow providing just enough light to see by. The air grew cooler, and the sounds of the forest seemed to fade into the background, replaced by an almost palpable silence. After what felt like hours, Ethan finally emerged into a clearing. In the center of the clearing stood a massive, ancient tree, its trunk so wide that it would take several people to encircle it. The tree's bark was a deep, rich blue, and its leaves shimmered with a soft, golden light. It was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen, a true marvel of nature. But what truly caught his attention was the structure nestled within the tree's branches. It was a dwelling of some sort, built from the very wood of the tree itself, with vines and foliage woven into its design. The structure was almost organic in appearance, as if it had grown naturally from the tree, rather than being constructed by hand. Ethan's heart raced as he realized that he was not alone on this planet. Someone or something lived here. The sense of being watched intensified, and he knew that whoever or whatever was observing him had finally made their presence known. Summoning all his courage, Ethan took a step towards the tree. "I'm not here to harm anyone," he called out, his voice firm but laced with uncertainty. "My ship crashed, and I'm stranded. I just need help." For a moment, there was no response. Then, from within the shadows of the tree, a figure emerged. She was tall, almost statuesque, with luminescent skin that seemed to glow with an inner light. Her skin was a deep shade of green, like the leaves of the forest, and her hair flowed like a cascade of silken vines down her back. Her eyes, large and almond-shaped, gleamed with an otherworldly light, a soft, pale blue that seemed to pierce through the very fabric of reality. Ethan's breath caught in his throat as he beheld her. She was unlike any being he had ever encountered, her beauty both mesmerizing and alien. There was an aura of power about her, a quiet strength that radiated from her very being. The woman, if she could be called that, regarded him with an expression of calm curiosity. She spoke, her voice melodic and soft, though the words were foreign to his ears. Yet somehow he understood her meaning. "Who are you?" she asked, her tone gentle but commanding. Ethan swallowed hard, his mind struggling to process the surreal situation. "My name is Ethan," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm an astronaut from Earth. My ship malfunctioned, and I crash-landed here." The woman tilted her head slightly, as if considering his words. Then she spoke again, this time in perfect, if slightly accented, English. "You are far from home, Ethan of Earth." He nodded, relief flooding through him at the sound of his native tongue. "Yes, very far. I didn't mean to intrude, but I have no way to contact my people. I don't even know where I am." The woman's expression softened, and she took a step closer, her movements graceful and fluid. "You are on Alara, the heart of our world," she said. "It is a place unknown to your kind, a sanctuary hidden from the stars." Ethan's mind raced as he processed her words. Alara, the name, was as beautiful and mysterious as the world itself. I didn't mean to disturb your sanctuary, he said, hoping to convey his sincerity. I just need help to survive, to find a way back home. The woman regarded him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face, as if looking for something beyond the surface. Finally she nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. You are not the first to find themselves lost in the cosmos, she said. But you are the first of your kind to reach Alara. Ethan's heart skipped a beat at her words. The first of his kind? Did that mean there were other species, other travelers who had found their way to this hidden world? He opened his mouth to ask, but the woman raised a hand, silencing him. My name is Naya, she said, her voice carrying an air of authority. I am the leader of the Alara, the guardians of this world. You may stay with us, Ethan of Earth, until you find your way home. But know this Alara is a place of harmony, and all who dwell here must respect the balance of our world. Ethan nodded, grateful and awed in equal measure. Thank you, Naya. I promise I'll do whatever it takes to honor your ways. Naya's smile widened, and she extended a hand to him, her fingers long and slender. Come, Ethan. There is much for you to learn. As Ethan took her hand, a sense of calm washed over him, dispelling the fear and uncertainty that had plagued him since the crash. He didn't know what the future held, or if he would ever find his way back to Earth. But in that moment, as he followed Naya into the heart of the ancient tree, he felt a sense of purpose, a connection to this strange, beautiful world that was unlike anything he had ever known. The journey through the forest was surreal. The trees seemed to whisper as they passed, their leaves rustling in a language that was just out of reach of his understanding. The bioluminescent plants that lined the path pulsed with a gentle light, illuminating the way. The women moved with an effortless grace, their footsteps barely making a sound, as if they were part of the forest itself. As they walked, Ethan couldn't help but notice the way they kept their distance from him, casting furtive glances in his direction. There was curiosity in their eyes, but also a hint of something else, fear, perhaps, or reverence. It was as if they were unsure of what to make of him, this strange being who had fallen from the sky. Finally, they emerged into a large clearing dominated by a massive, ancient tree. Its trunk was so wide that it seemed to support the sky itself, and its branches spread out like a canopy, casting dappled light across the ground. Nestled within the branches was a series of dwellings, woven from the very wood and vines of the tree. It was a village, or perhaps a sanctuary, built in perfect harmony with its surroundings. The women led him to the base of the tree, where a platform was carved into the trunk, leading up into the branches. The leader, the woman who had first spoken to him, gestured for him to ascend. Ethan hesitated, then nodded, climbing the steps with the women following close behind. As they reached the first dwelling, Ethan was struck by the beauty of the structure. It was both simple and intricate, the walls woven from vines and branches, the floor smooth and cool beneath his feet. The interior was bathed in soft light, coming from orbs that hung from the ceiling, glowing with a gentle, pulsing energy. The leader gestured for him to sit on a mat woven from some kind of soft, fibrous material. Ethan complied, his exhaustion catching up to him as he sank down onto the mat. The women gathered around him, their eyes never leaving him, their expressions a mix of curiosity and caution. The leader sat across from him, her eyes locked onto his. You are a man, she said, as if testing the word on her tongue. A being of legend, spoken of in our oldest stories. Ethan frowned, confused. I'm just a human. I don't understand. She nodded slowly. To us, men are mythological. Stories passed down from the time before our world became what it is now. You are the first we have ever seen, the first to walk among us. Ethan's mind raced. Mythological? How could that be? He was a man, a human, nothing more. But to these women he was something extraordinary, something out of legend. Before he could respond, the leader raised her hand, and the other women stepped forward. They each held something in their hands, gifts, Ethan realized. The first woman, her skin a deep shade of blue, presented him with a flower unlike any he had ever seen. It was large, its petals glowing with an inner light that shifted in color from pink to violet as it moved. The second woman, with skin the color of jade, began to sing, her voice a haunting melody that filled the room, the language foreign but the emotion behind it clear. The third woman, her skin a pale green, extended a small, intricately carved object towards him. It was a figurine, a representation of a being that looked strikingly similar to Ethan, though the features were more exaggerated, almost godlike. Ethan accepted each gift with a mix of gratitude and bewilderment. These women were treating him as something sacred, something revered. It was both humbling and unsettling. The leader watched him closely as he accepted the final gift, her expression unreadable. "We are the Alara," she said finally. "The guardians of this world, the keepers of its balance. Our lives are intertwined with the planet, and we have lived in harmony for countless cycles. You, Ethan Reynolds, are an anomaly, a being out of time and place. But you are here now, and we will learn from you as you will learn from us." Ethan nodded slowly, his mind still reeling from everything that had happened. He was on a planet far from home, surrounded by beings who saw him as a legend come to life. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew that this was the beginning of something extraordinary. The leader stood, her eyes still locked on his. "Rest now," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "You are safe here. We will speak more in the morning." Ethan nodded, too tired to argue. As the women filed out of the room, leaving him alone in the soft glow of the orbs, he finally allowed himself to relax. His thoughts drifted, the exhaustion of the day finally catching up to him. As he drifted off to sleep, one thought lingered in his mind: the Alara women, with their luminescent skin and hauntingly beautiful voices, were unlike anything he had ever encountered. He was a stranger in their world, a man of myth to them, and yet they had taken him in, curious and cautious but not hostile. The journey ahead was uncertain, and the path forward unclear, but Ethan knew that he had found something rare and precious, a connection to a world beyond his own, and perhaps, a new purpose. With that thought, he let the weariness take him, his body sinking into the soft mat as sleep claimed him. The last thing he saw before his eyes closed was the gentle, pulsing light of the orbs, their glow a reminder that, despite the vastness of the universe, he was not alone. And for the first time since his ship had malfunctioned, Ethan felt a flicker of hope, a hope that perhaps he had found more than just a place to survive. He had found a new beginning. The days on Alara passed in a tranquil rhythm, a far cry from the chaos and noise of Earth. Ethan Reynolds had grown accustomed to the subtle hum of the planet, a constant pulse that resonated through the very ground he walked on. The Alara women, with their grace and silent strength, moved through the forest like the wind, their presence both comforting and mysterious. And though the tribe treated him with respect and kindness, Ethan's thoughts were consumed by one woman, Naya. From the moment he had arrived, Naya had intrigued him. She was unlike anyone he had ever met, on Earth or elsewhere. Tall and statuesque, with skin that shimmered like the leaves of the great trees surrounding them, she carried an aura of quiet power that demanded both respect and admiration. Her eyes, deep and wise, held the secrets of a world Ethan could only begin to comprehend. As the leader of the Alara, Naya was the embodiment of everything the tribe stood for: wisdom, strength, and a deep, unbreakable bond with the planet. Ethan had spent countless hours in Naya's company, learning about the world of Alara, its history, and the unique connection the Alara women shared with it. They would walk together through the forest, Naya explaining the purpose of each plant, each creature, and the delicate balance that maintained the harmony of their world. Under her guidance, he learned how to navigate the alien terrain, how to listen to the whispers of the trees, and how to feel the heartbeat of the planet beneath his feet. But it wasn't just Naya's wisdom that captivated him. There was a vulnerability in her that she showed to no one else, a softness that belied her role as the tribe's leader. In quiet moments, when they were alone by the great river or under the stars, Naya would share stories of her past, of the burden she carried as the leader of her people, and the loneliness that sometimes came with her position. In those moments, Ethan saw not just a leader, but a woman strong, yes, but also yearning for something more. Ethan, in turn, shared stories of Earth, of its cities, its people, and the vastness of its oceans. He spoke of the stars and the dreams that had led him into space, the need to explore the unknown, and the wonder of discovering new worlds. Naya listened with rapt attention, her curiosity about his world evident in the questions she asked, and the way her eyes would light up at each new revelation. The other women of the tribe had also shown interest in Ethan. They admired his otherworldly appearance, his strength, and the strange but fascinating stories he shared. Each woman had her own way of expressing her interest, some with gifts of rare, glowing flowers, others with songs that spoke of ancient legends, and still others by showing him the hidden places of Alara, places of breathtaking beauty that few had ever seen. But despite their attention, Ethan's heart was set on Naya. He could see the admiration in the eyes of the other women, could feel the pull of their affection, but none of it compared to what he felt for Naya. It was not just love, it was a deep, almost spiritual connection that went beyond mere attraction. Naya was his equal, his partner, the one who understood him in a way no one else ever had. He was gentle in his rejections, always respectful of the women's feelings. He would accept their gifts with gratitude, listen to their songs with genuine appreciation, and marvel at the places they showed him, but he made it clear, in subtle but firm ways, that his heart belonged to Naya. The women, for their part, took the rejection with grace. They were disappointed, yes, but they also understood. They saw the way Ethan looked at Naya, the way his eyes followed her every movement, and they knew that his feelings were genuine. As time passed, the initial tension within the tribe began to fade. The women, who had once competed for Ethan's affection, now turned their energies towards supporting the bond that had formed between their leader and the human man. They admired Ethan not just for his strength or his stories, but for the depth of his love for Naya and the respect he showed for their culture and their world. This shift in the tribe's dynamic did not go unnoticed by Naya. She saw the way the women had come to accept Ethan as one of their own, and the way they rallied behind her as she led them through the challenges facing their world. Naya herself had come to care deeply for Ethan, though she had been cautious in showing it. As the leader of her people, she had always put the needs of the tribe before her own, and the idea of allowing herself to love someone, especially someone not of their world, was both terrifying and exhilarating. But Ethan was not like anyone she had ever known. He was strong and brave, yes, but he was also kind and thoughtful, with a heart as vast as the sky he had come from. He respected her, not just as a leader, but as a person, and he saw the parts of her that she kept hidden from the world. With Ethan, Naya could be herself, free from the weight of her responsibilities, if only for a little while. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, and soon it became clear to both of them that this was no ordinary connection. It was something deeper, something that transcended the boundaries of their worlds. They began to spend more time together, not just exploring the planet, but also planning for the future, both their own and that of the tribe. It was during one of these planning sessions that the first signs of the impending crisis began to reveal themselves. They were standing at the edge of a cliff, overlooking a vast expanse of forest that stretched out as far as the eye could see. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the landscape, and the air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers and the distant calls of strange, alien creatures. It was a beautiful, serene moment, one that Ethan would have cherished if not for the gnawing sense of unease that had been growing within him. Naya stood beside him, her gaze fixed on the horizon, her expression thoughtful. "The balance of our world is shifting," she said quietly, more to herself than to him. "The signs are subtle, but they are there." Ethan turned to her, concern etched on his face. "What do you mean?" Naya sighed, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "Alara is a living, breathing entity, connected in ways that go beyond what you or I can fully understand. The planet speaks to us in the movement of the trees, in the flow of the rivers, in the songs of the wind. But lately those songs have changed. The trees are restless. The rivers murmur of things unseen, and the wind. The wind carries a warning." Ethan listened intently, his mind racing. He had seen the harmony with which the Alara women lived with their world, how every action they took was in tune with the rhythms of the planet. If something was disrupting that balance, it could have serious consequences, not just for the tribe, but for the entire planet. "Is there anything we can do?" he asked, his voice tinged with urgency. Naya shook her head slowly. "We must first understand the nature of the threat. The planet's pulse is weakening, but I do not yet know why. It could be a natural cycle, or it could be something more sinister. Either way, we must act quickly. If the balance is not restored, Alara will suffer." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. The thought of this beautiful, vibrant world being in danger was almost too much to bear. He had come to care deeply for Alara and its people, and the idea of losing it was unthinkable. "What can I do to help?" he asked, his voice resolute. Naya turned to him, her eyes softening. You have already done much, Ethan. Your presence here has brought hope to my people, and your bond with me has strengthened the ties between us all. But now, we must go further. We must find the source of this disruption and stop it before it is too late. Ethan nodded, determination filling him. Then let's do it. Together. Naya smiled, a rare, genuine smile that made Ethan's heart skip a beat. Yes, she said softly. Together. The days that followed were filled with preparation. Naya and Ethan worked closely together, gathering information, consulting with the elders of the tribe, and planning their next steps. The other women of the tribe rallied behind them, their initial disappointment giving way to a fierce determination to protect their world and support their leader. Ethan was struck by the unity of the tribe, by the way the women worked together with a single-minded focus on the task at hand. They were a formidable force, each woman contributing her unique strengths and abilities to the effort. And though Ethan was an outsider, he was treated as one of their own, his knowledge and skills valued and respected. But even as they prepared, the signs of the impending crisis grew more apparent. The once gentle rivers became unpredictable, their currents erratic and dangerous. The trees, usually so steady and calm, swayed unnaturally, their branches creaking and groaning as if in pain. And the wind, once a soft whisper, now howled through the forest, carrying with it a sense of foreboding that chilled Ethan to the bone. Despite the growing danger, Ethan and Naya's bond only deepened. They spent long nights discussing their plans, their hopes, and their fears, finding comfort and strength in each other's presence. Naya, who had always kept her emotions in check, began to open up more, sharing her worries and doubts with Ethan, who in turn offered her his unwavering support. The other women of the tribe noticed the change in their leader, the way she seemed lighter, more at ease when Ethan was near. They saw the way she looked at him, the way her eyes softened and her smile came more easily. And they understood. What had started as an attraction had grown into something much more, something that went beyond the boundaries of their worlds. In the quiet moments when they were alone, Naya would let her guard down completely, allowing herself to be vulnerable with Ethan in a way she had never been with anyone else. They would sit by the great river, watching the stars, their hands intertwined, speaking in hushed tones about the future, both their own and that of Alara. It was during one of these quiet moments that Naya made a decision that would change everything. The night was still, the air heavy with the scent of blooming flowers and the soft chirping of nocturnal creatures. Ethan and Naya sat together by the river, the water reflecting the light of the twin moons above. It was a peaceful scene, one that belied the tension that had been building within them both. Naya turned to Ethan, her expression serious. "There is something I need to tell you," she said quietly, her voice carrying a weight that made Ethan's heart skip a beat. He looked at her, concern etched on his face. "What is it?" Naya hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. "I have been thinking about the balance of our world, about the crisis that is unfolding. I believe that the source of the disruption lies deep within the heart of Alara, in a place that few have ever seen. It is a place of great power, but also great danger." Ethan listened intently, his mind racing. "And you think we need to go there?" Naya nodded. "Yes. If we are to save Alara, we must journey to the heart of the planet and restore the balance. But it will not be easy. The path is treacherous, and the dangers are many. I cannot ask you to come with me, Ethan. This is my responsibility, my duty as the leader of my people." Ethan shook his head, his expression resolute. "Naya, you don't have to ask. I'm coming with you. We'll face whatever lies ahead together." Naya's eyes softened, and she reached out, taking his hand in hers. "You are brave, Ethan, but this journey, it may cost us everything." Ethan squeezed her hand gently, his gaze unwavering. "I'm willing to take that risk. For you, for Alara, for us." Naya smiled, a mixture of sadness and gratitude in her eyes. "Then we will go together," she said softly, "and whatever happens, we will face it as one." The decision was made. The next morning, Naya called the tribe together, explaining the situation and their plan to journey to the heart of the planet. The women listened in silence, their expressions serious but determined. There was no hesitation, no doubt in their eyes. They would follow their leader, and they would support her in whatever way they could. The preparations were swift. Supplies were gathered, routes were mapped, and the tribe was organized to maintain the balance of their world while Naya and Ethan undertook their journey. There were no goodbyes, no farewells, only the quiet resolve of a people united by a common purpose. As they set out, Ethan felt a surge of emotion. He was leaving behind the safety of the tribe, the comfort of the familiar, and stepping into the unknown. But he was not afraid. With Naya by his side, he felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. They traveled for days, moving deeper into the forest, the landscape becoming more rugged and unforgiving with each step. The signs of the planet's distress became more pronounced. The rivers were dry, the trees barren, and the once vibrant life of the forest had gone eerily silent. The very air seemed to pulse with tension, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. Finally, they reached the entrance to the heart of Alara, a massive, ancient cave that seemed to descend into the very core of the planet. The air was thick with energy, a tangible force that made the hairs on the back of Ethan's neck stand on end. This was the source of the planet's power, the place where the balance of Alara was maintained. Naya turned to Ethan, her expression serious. "This is it," she said quietly. "Once we enter, there is no turning back." Ethan nodded, his resolve unwavering. "I'm ready." Together, they stepped into the cave, the darkness swallowing them whole. The journey ahead was uncertain, the dangers unknown, but they would face it together. As they descended into the heart of the planet, hand in hand, Ethan felt a sense of calm wash over him. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it as one, united by their love, their bond, and their determination to save the world they had both come to cherish. And in that moment, as they ventured into the unknown, Ethan knew that no matter what happened, he had found something precious on Alara, something worth fighting for, something worth risking everything for. He had found a home. The light of the twin moons filtered through the canopy, casting ethereal shadows on the ground as Ethan and Naya made their way back to the heart of the Alara village. Their journey to the planet's core had been harrowing and illuminating, revealing the source of the mysterious force that was slowly consuming Alara. The truth they had uncovered was both terrifying and galvanizing. It was not just a natural cycle gone awry, but an external threat, an ancient force that had been dormant for millennia, now awakened and threatening to destroy everything. As they approached the village hand in hand, the weight of their discovery hung heavy between them. The path ahead was clear. If they didn't act quickly, Alara would fall. But the challenges they faced were not just external within the tribe. Tensions simmered, and Ethan's presence, once a symbol of hope, had become a point of contention. The Alara women greeted them with a mixture of relief and apprehension. They had been waiting, their anxiety growing with each passing day that Ethan and Naya had been gone. Naya's return brought a sense of calm, but the look in her eyes told them that their ordeal was far from over. Naya called for an immediate council meeting. The women gathered in the great hall, their expressions solemn as they awaited their leader's words. Ethan stood beside Naya, feeling the eyes of the tribe upon him. There was a time when their gazes had been warm and welcoming, filled with curiosity and admiration. Now many of those same eyes were filled with doubt, even suspicion. Naya began to speak, her voice steady and authoritative. She recounted their journey to the core of the planet, the discovery of the ancient force, and the peril that now threatened their world. As she spoke, the gravity of the situation became clear to everyone in the room. This was not a battle they could fight alone. It would require all of their knowledge, all of their strength, and perhaps something from beyond their world. When Naya finished, there was a heavy silence in the hall. The women exchanged glances, their faces etched with concern and uncertainty. It was then that one of the elders, a woman named Thalia, stepped forward. "Naya." Thalia began, her voice carrying the weight of many years of wisdom. "We understand the danger we face, but we must also consider the source of this information. The ancient texts spoke of a time when the balance would be threatened, but they also warned of outsiders who would bring about our downfall. How can we be sure that Ethan's presence is not part of this prophecy?" Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. He had known that some of the tribe members were wary of him, but to be directly accused of being the harbinger of their doom was something he hadn't expected. Naya's eyes flashed with anger, but she kept her voice calm as she responded. "Thalia, I understand your concerns, but Ethan has proven himself time and again. He risked his life to journey to the core with me, and his knowledge of Earth's technology could be the key to saving Alara. We cannot turn our backs on him now." Thalia looked at Ethan, her expression unreadable. "Perhaps, Naya. But we must proceed with caution. The balance of our world is delicate, and any disruption, intentional or not, could have catastrophic consequences. Ethan felt the weight of Thalia's words settle heavily on his shoulders. He had always known that his presence on Alara was an anomaly, but to be viewed as a potential threat was a harsh reminder of how different he was from these people. And yet he couldn't deny the connection he felt to them, especially to Naya. As the council continued to debate, Ethan's mind wandered to thoughts of Earth. He missed his home, the familiar sights and sounds, the feeling of solid ground beneath his feet. But as he looked at Naya, at the tribe he had come to care for, he realized that Alara had become more than just a temporary refuge. It had become a part of him, and the thought of leaving it behind was almost unbearable. When the council meeting finally adjourned, Naya and Ethan retreated to their private quarters. The tension in the air was palpable, and for the first time since their return, Ethan felt a deep sense of unease. Naya paced the room, her brow furrowed in thought. "I didn't expect this," she said finally, her voice tinged with frustration. "Thalia's doubts are not without merit, but to accuse you of being a danger, it's absurd." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I understand where she's coming from, Naya. I'm an outsider here, and the last thing I want is to disrupt your way of life. But we have to find a way to convince them that I'm not a threat." Naya stopped pacing and looked at him, her eyes filled with worry. "I know you're not, Ethan, but the others, they fear what they don't understand. And your presence, your love for me, it challenges everything they've known." Ethan stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "And what about you, Naya? Do you have doubts about us?" Naya shook her head, her grip tightening on his hands. "No, Ethan, I have no doubts about us. But I'm worried about what it means for my people. Our love is something new, something that has never happened before. It's going to change things for better or worse." Ethan gazed into her eyes, feeling the weight of the choice that lay ahead. "Naya, if my being here is going to cause harm, I'll leave. I don't want to be the cause of any more division." Naya's eyes widened in shock, and she pulled him closer, her voice fierce. "No, Ethan, you are not leaving. We will face this together, just as we've faced everything else. You belong here, with me, with us." Ethan felt a surge of emotion at her words. He had always admired Naya's strength, but in this moment he realized just how much he needed her, how much he loved her. "Then we'll find a way," he said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "We'll find a way to save Alara, and we'll do it together." Naya nodded, her eyes softening as she leaned in, resting her forehead against his. Together. In the days that followed, Ethan and Naya threw themselves into the task of finding a solution to the crisis. They spent long hours in the council chamber, poring over ancient texts and combining the Alara's natural sciences with Ethan's knowledge of Earth's technology. It was an arduous process, one that required patience and creativity, but slowly, a plan began to take shape. The force that was consuming Alara was a manifestation of the planet's life force, a primal energy that had been awakened by the disruption in the planet's balance. To restore harmony, they would need to create a device that could channel and stabilize this energy, preventing it from spiraling out of control. Ethan's engineering background proved invaluable in designing the device, while Naya's deep connection to the planet guided them in understanding how to harness its power. It was a delicate balance, one that required the utmost precision, but with each passing day they grew more confident in their ability to succeed. However, the tensions within the tribe continued to simmer. Thalia and a few others remained skeptical of Ethan's intentions, and whispers of dissent began to spread. Some feared that the device would only make things worse, that it was an unnatural solution to a problem that required a return to their traditional ways. Ethan could sense the unease, and it weighed heavily on him. He didn't want to impose his will on the Alara, but he also knew that without action, their world would be lost. He often found himself torn between his desire to help and his fear of causing harm, a conflict that kept him awake at night. Naya, too, struggled with the burden of leadership. She was caught between her love for Ethan and her duty to her people, and the strain was beginning to show. But through it all, she remained steadfast, her resolve unshaken. She believed in their plan, and she believed in Ethan, and that belief gave her the strength to push forward. The day of the device's activation finally arrived. The entire tribe gathered at the site, a sacred clearing deep within the forest where the planet's energy was most concentrated. The atmosphere was tense, the air thick with anticipation and fear. Ethan and Naya stood side by side, the device at their feet, ready to be activated. Thalia stepped forward, her expression grave. "Naya, Ethan, before you proceed, I must ask one final time, are you certain this is the right course of action? The consequences could be dire." Naya met Thalia's gaze, her voice calm and assured. "I understand your concerns, Thalia, but I believe this is the only way to save our world. We have come too far to turn back now." Thalia nodded slowly, her eyes searching Naya's for any sign of doubt. Finding none, she stepped back, her face unreadable. Ethan took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. This was the moment of truth, the culmination of all their efforts. He glanced at Naya, who gave him a small, reassuring smile. "Let's do this," she said softly. Ethan nodded, then bent down to activate the device. It hummed to life, its core glowing with a soft, pulsing light. The energy it began to draw from the planet was powerful, almost overwhelming, but the device held steady, channeling the force and stabilizing it as they had planned. For a moment, everything seemed to be going well. The energy flow was smooth, and the readings were within safe parameters. But then, something unexpected happened. The ground beneath them began to tremble, and the air crackled with an electric charge. The device struggled to contain the energy, its core glowing brighter and brighter until it was almost blinding. Ethan's heart raced as he realized that something was wrong. The energy was too powerful, too unstable. They had underestimated the force they were dealing with, and the device was on the verge of overload. "Naya, we need to shut it down," he shouted, his voice tinged with panic. But before they could act, the device emitted a high-pitched whine, and a blinding flash of light erupted from its core. Ethan was thrown back by the force of the explosion, the world around him dissolving into chaos. When the light finally faded, Ethan found himself lying on the ground, disoriented and in pain. The device was destroyed, its remains scattered across the clearing. The energy that had been contained within it was now unleashed, swirling chaotically around them, tearing through the fabric of the planet itself. Ethan struggled to his feet, his mind racing. The plan had failed, and now Alara was in even greater danger. He turned to find Naya, but she was nowhere in sight. "Naya," he called out, his voice hoarse. A moment later he saw her, lying motionless on the ground a few feet away. His heart lurched in his chest as he rushed to her side, fear gripping him like a vise. "Naya, please wake up," he pleaded, his hands shaking as he gently shook her. For a terrifying moment there was no response. But then, Naya's eyes fluttered open, and she looked up at him, her expression dazed. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice weak. Relief flooded through him, and he pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "Thank God you're okay," he murmured, his voice choked with emotion. Naya winced in pain, her hand clutching her side where a deep gash marred her skin. The device. "It didn't work," she said, her voice filled with despair. Ethan shook his head, his mind racing. "No, it didn't. But we're not done yet. We can still fix this. We just need to think." But before he could finish, the ground beneath them shook violently, and the energy storm intensified, the air crackling with raw power. Ethan knew they were running out of time. In that moment, Ethan realized what needed to be done. The only way to stabilize the energy was to sacrifice himself, to use his own life force to channel and contain the power that was tearing Alara apart. It was a desperate plan, one that had little chance of success, but it was the only option they had left. "Naya, listen to me," Ethan said urgently, his voice filled with resolve. "There's only one way to stop this. I have to do it. I have to contain the energy myself." Naya's eyes widened in horror as she realized what he was saying. "No, Ethan, you can't. You'll die." Ethan cupped her face in his hands, his eyes filled with love and determination. "It's the only way, Naya. I can't let Alara be destroyed, and I can't let you die. I love you too much." Tears welled up in Naya's eyes and she shook her head, her voice breaking. "There has to be another way. Please, Ethan, don't do this." But Ethan was resolute. He knew what had to be done, and there was no turning back. He leaned in, pressing his lips to hers in a kiss filled with all the love and passion he felt for her, a kiss that conveyed everything he couldn't put into words. When he finally pulled away, he saw the tears streaming down her face, her expression filled with anguish and helplessness. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "But this is how it has to be. I love you, Naya. I always will." With that, Ethan stood up, his heart heavy with the weight of his decision. He turned to face the raging energy storm, knowing that this was the end. As he stepped forward, preparing to make the ultimate sacrifice, he felt Naya's hand grab his arm, pulling him back. "No, Ethan, you don't have to do this alone," she said fiercely, her voice filled with determination. "We'll do it together." Ethan stared at her in shock, his mind reeling. "Naya, no, I can't let you." But Naya silenced him with a look, her eyes blazing with resolve. "We're stronger together, Ethan. If we combine our life forces, we might have a chance, but only if we do it together." Ethan hesitated, his heart torn. He didn't want to risk Naya's life, but he also knew that she was right. Together, they stood a better chance of success. "All right," he said finally, his voice trembling. "Together." Naya nodded, and they turned to face the energy storm, their hands clasped tightly together. They closed their eyes, focusing on their connection, on the love and trust they shared. Slowly, they began to channel their life forces, reaching out to the raw energy that was tearing the planet apart. At first, it was overwhelming. The power was too vast, too chaotic. But they held on, drawing strength from each other, refusing to let go. Gradually, they began to stabilize the energy, guiding it, containing it, until the storm began to subside. The ground beneath them stopped shaking, and the air grew still. The energy storm faded, leaving behind only a faint glow that slowly dissipated into the night. Ethan and Naya collapsed to the ground, their bodies drained, their breaths ragged. They had done it, they had saved Alara. As they lay there, exhausted but alive, Ethan realized that his choice had been made. He couldn't leave this world, couldn't leave Naya. Alara was his home now, and Naya was his future. "Naya," he whispered, his voice barely audible. I'm staying with you." Naya smiled weakly, her eyes filled with tears of relief and joy. "I'm glad," she whispered back. "I couldn't bear to lose you." They lay there in each other's arms, the weight of their ordeal slowly lifting, replaced by a deep sense of peace. They had faced the impossible and emerged victorious, and now they had a future to build together, a future filled with hope, love, and the promise of a new beginning. The Alara tribe gathered around them, their expressions filled with awe and gratitude. Thalia stepped forward, her eyes shining with admiration. "You have done the impossible," she said quietly. "You have saved our world, and in doing so, you have shown us the true power of love and unity. You are one of us now, Ethan, and we welcome you as our own." Ethan nodded, feeling a deep sense of belonging that he had never known before. He had found his place, his purpose, and most importantly, his home. And as he looked into Naya's eyes, he knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, bound by the love that had brought them to this moment and the promise of a future filled with endless possibilities.